So, you want to get back into Yu-Gi-Oh, huh? But you haven't played since you were a literal fetus and you're confused by all the new rules that Konami has pulled out of their ass to graph Sorcerer. This is literally a monster card and a spell card. And if that confuses you, you've come to the right place, because I too wanted to get back into this and had no idea what the f was going on. You know, in a weird way, my hatred for YouTube ads is what got me to start Yu-Gi-Oh again and ultimately make this YouTube channel. See, last December, I was getting really tired of every single streaming service having the longest, most incessant ads. It was like I couldn't go 5 minutes without seeing an ad for Raid Shadow Legends NordVPN. I'm just joking, I don't have channel sponsors. Anyway, I was getting sick of ads and I didn't really have any friends, so I figured I'd get back into gaming. I used to play a lot of competitive games, and this is when I had my most consistent and strongest friendships. Turns out when you have a shared interest and continued activity to do, it's really easy to maintain friendships. And also, video games don't have ads. So I decided that I would go shopping for a console. I was pretty hesitant about getting a Switch because the Switch has been out for so long and the Switch 2 could drop at any moment. I was also pretty hesitant about getting a Steam Deck because they're just really expensive and bulky and just not for me. So I started scouring the deepest, darkest corners of gaming YouTube to find some alternative game systems. And after a couple weeks of searching, I found this, the AYN Odin Lite. And this handheld is probably one of the best purchases I've ever made in my life. Like, I cannot understate the bang for your buck with this system. It's an Android-based handheld that can run console games via emulation. It'll run PS2, PS1, Wii, GameCube, 3DS, Game Boy, and a lot of other systems. It'll also technically play Switch games, though admittedly not very well since the hardware is still relatively new. And since it runs Android, you can play modern Android games on it as well. Anyway, I started playing this game religiously, reliving any game that I played as I was a kid. Ratchet & Clank, Kingdom Hearts, Sonic the Hedgehog, Pokemon, SpongeBob, Revenge of the Flying Dutchman, the list goes on. Not to mention, you can also download Steam Link to this so you can stream games that won't necessarily run on the hardware. So basically it plays everything. But out of all of the hundreds of games in my library, there were 2 games that I played more than all of the others put together. The first is Yu-Gi-Oh! Duelist of the Roses, a game that I'm sure a lot of you guys are familiar with. In case you aren't, it's a PS2 game that originally came out in 2001. The game plays nothing like the card game that we know today. In fact, it feels more like chess than traditional Yu-Gi-Oh! Here, you pick a monster card from your deck to be a deck master, and this kind of acts like the king in chess. In fact, it moves exactly like a king in chess. And yes, I said move because in this game, your cards move around the field on a 7x7 grid that make up the field. Monsters, spells, and trap cards are all played onto this field. You can then move your cards around the board to attack other monsters, interact with spells and traps, and to attack your opponent's deck master. And this game is so good. Just something about the way it plays makes for such an interesting and fun take on Yu-Gi-Oh! Like, even as a kid, I remember dumping hours into this game. And fun fact, this game wasn't even mine growing up. My mom was actually into Yu-Gi-Oh! When I was a kid, and she bought this game for herself, but my brother and I ended up playing it more than her, so. Anyway, the second game that I was obsessed with was Yu-Gi-Oh! World Championship 2008 for the Nintendo DS. Unlike Duelist of the Roses, the World Championship games followed the actual real-life rules of the card game. It taught me phases, deck synergies, and overall just gave me a new appreciation for the game, beyond simple playground Yu-Gi-Oh! Now, if you're a returning player or a Yu-Gi boomer, I cannot recommend this game enough because it is literally just GOAT format Yu-Gi-Oh! In video game form. And if you're not familiar with GOAT format, it's what's commonly referred to as the golden age of Yu-Gi-Oh! This was around like 2004 to like, I want to say like 2008-ish when the game came out. And I just could not get enough of this game. Even out of all of the games that I had in my library, I just kept spending hours and hours into this random card game simulator because it was that fun. The game is challenging. It's always throwing these interesting gameplay scenarios at you that forces you to think on your feet for most of the campaign. The enemy decks are all fun and interesting, and the AI is surprisingly confident. Admittedly, the story is kind of phoned in and boring, but the gameplay is so fun that you barely even notice it. After something like 100+ hours of gameplay, I was fully addicted to Yu-Gi-Oh! And I needed the next thing. So after, a little bit of Google searching, I stumbled upon Master Duel, a game that I'm sure a lot of you guys are familiar with. But if you're not, I covered Master Duel and the current state of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Player situation in my previous video. Anyway, I downloaded Master Duel, played the tutorial, started my first game, and got absolutely wrecked. In fact, I didn't even get to play because my opponent played a deck that sent every card in my deck to the graveyard before my turn even started. Why is something like this allowed in a game? Is this what Yu-Gi-Oh is like now? And at this point, I was instantly pretty discouraged. And then I read a comment in that Reddit post that got me thinking.
In the nicest and most genuine way possible, this is a rite of passage, pretty much LOL. This is modern Yu-Gi-Oh for ya. Though I will say not having hand traps and them going complete full combo isn't always a guarantee, but it kinda just be like that sometimes. Yugioh is a game of remembering your losses and why they happened, so don't be too discouraged, hahaha 14 AR.
Something about that comment just got me curious. Like I said, I used to play a lot of competitive games where you will be bad for a while before you start to get good. So I decided to get good and see how far this modern Yu-Gi-Oh rabbit hole goes. I spent 2 weeks learning all of the new mechanics. I would fall asleep to 12-hour duel logs videos just so I could learn more of the cards in the game. And after a couple weeks of studying, playing, and getting wrecked repeatedly, I actually started to pick up a couple wins. I was getting a grasp on modern Yu-Gi-Oh! And I actually kind of like it. I just think that classic Yu-Gi-Oh! And modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Are just two entirely different games. And I think this is where a lot of the modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Sucks sentiments come from. Some people just want to play a casual card game with cool looking monsters, and it's sad when you open up Master Duel for the first time and find that that game just doesn't exist anymore. This would be like asking someone to play a game of chess and they pull out Chess 2, complete with new pieces you've never seen before and a board with more spaces and more rules on how to move your pieces on the board. How do you even start to learn all of these new rules? What are the new strategies of these new pieces? And are all the old strategies that I used to use outdated now? And most importantly, how do you get back into Yu-Gi-Oh? Step 1, find your passion. Like I've said a million times, modern Yu-Gi-Oh is hard. So hard, in fact, that your first couple weeks in the game are going to be filled with disappointment. You're going to lose a lot.
That's unbelievable.
You are going to lose games on rules that you didn't even know existed. You're gonna watch meta players combo off for 15 minutes while you sit there and are absolutely unable to do anything.
Tila, what now?
But that's how you learn the game. Every time you lose a match at Yu-Gi-Oh, you get a little bit better. Eventually, after learning from your mistakes enough times, you'll have enough of a grasp on the game to start winning.
Oh my god, he's actually got it! That was so fast!
Obliterate! Jesus!
And honestly, that feeling is so rewarding. The first time you're able to beat a deck that you've been trying to beat for so long, it makes the whole Yu-Gi-Oh experience worth it. Well, almost. But it takes a lot to get to that point. When you're still losing and learning how to play the game, it's hard to endure all of these losses. So it's important to be somewhat passionate about the game. And so I'd say for everyone, even if you haven't seen the anime, returning player or not, for everyone to watch the Yu-Gi-Oh anime. It's a great place to find a love of the card game because it's just a really good show. Even in 2024, I feel like the original Yu-Gi-Oh anime holds up surprisingly well. While I was getting back into Yu-Gi-Oh, I was rewatching the anime, and it really helped for me to like really lock in and learn the game. Also, having friends in the Yu-Gi-Oh community is also super good. If you have a group of people with a shared interest, suddenly like learning to be a part of that group becomes a lot easier. Like I said in my previous video, for me, this was the Duel Cafe in virtual reality. It was the place where I learned to play Yu-Gi-Oh, and I made a lot of friends who played the game. Step 2, play the meta. When you're first learning Yu-Gi-Oh, I recommend everyone start off by playing a deck that is meta. And by meta, I mean a deck that is good right now. You can go to a ton of Yu-Gi-Oh websites and find decks that are recommended by top level players. And these are the decks that I recommend everyone start off playing. Not because they're the best decks, but because when you're first starting off playing, it's better for you to be able to just hop right in and play and not have to worry about building your deck correctly. Because there are over 10,000 cards in Yu-Gi-Oh, and going through each and every one of them is kind of hard. Step 3, find a rogue deck that you like. And in my opinion, this is one of the most fun parts about getting into Yu-Gi-Oh, because I think rogue decks are where Yu-Gi-Oh kind of shines. Rogue decks are decks that are not necessarily meta, as in they're not the strongest raw power level wise, but they're still good decks. Finding a rogue deck that fits you is honestly so fun, whether it be for the lore, the play style, the card art, whatever it is. Once you find a deck that suits you, it honestly feels so good. Step 4, become a god at this rogue deck. I think playing rogue gets super fun once you get so good with your rogue decks, you start beating meta decks. And this honestly feels so rewarding because it feels like you worked for the win. You found a deck that you liked that fits your playstyle, and people say that, oh, it's not strong enough to win in the meta, and you win anyway. And that is honestly one of the best feelings, and I think that's where modern Yu-Gi-Oh shines. It's finding a deck that you like, building it your way, and making it work. And that is super duper fun. It is not easy to do. It takes a while to get into the groove, but once you're in it type beat. And after that, just enjoy yourself. Play meta, play rogue, play whatever kind of deck makes you happy. I think Yu-Gi-Oh is a game where once you kind of get how it works and what the rules are and everything like that, you can kind of branch out and do your own thing, which is super sick. You know, this isn't like a super detailed or professional step-by-step way to get into Yu-Gi-Oh! It's just how I got back into it. Hopefully you get into it too, or maybe you're already into Yu-Gi-Oh! Who knows? If you're a returning player, like leave a comment on how you got back into Yu-Gi-Oh! So other people can, you know, find their own way type beat. But yeah, thank you so much for listening to me ramble about this card game for however long. I'm really loving Yu-Gi-Oh! I honestly play it all the time. Thank you so much for all of your support on my last video. Did not expect it to do that well. The second part is coming. I believe that's the next video I have planned. Won't be as much of a wait on this one. Just a long story. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. You have a great rest of your day. My name is Zo, and I like Yu-Gi-Oh! I'll catch you later. Bye-bye.